Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. So I am continuing my series about English law, or common law, as it's commonly called. So I'm looking at a new subject within law now, which is tort. I remember when I first heard this as an 18-year-old, I thought it was the past tense of to teach, but no, it's tort, T-O-R-T. The trouble is, in my accent, it's non-rhotic and the R is almost silent, so T-O-R-T. As you may know, it's the French word for wrong. It's about civil wrongs. If somebody does something wrong against you and it's not a crime, then it is a tort. And that person is a tortfeasor because he has done tort or committed tort. Right? Because we've got civil law within English law, as in the non-criminal areas of law. And there are no criminal penalties for this. It could be called tortious malfeasance, as in a wrongdoing. A mal is bad, feasance is related to doing things, and tortious, it's an adjective of tort. So if somebody committed trespass, that's probably a tort. Now there are exemptions. For instance, there's a certain act that said in particular zones, let's say Buckingham Palace or army bases, that's a crime to trespass there. But generally speaking, trespass is a tort. Now, if you organise a huge number of people to trespass somewhere with the intention of damaging property, even by damaging it just by walking on it, like say walking on a golf course or a cricket pitch or something, that could be criminal. If somebody pollutes your property, that's usually tort, things like that. Breaches of contract are usually tortious. Stealing intellectual property is a tort rather than a crime. So there we are. Now, tort is mainly civil law, as in non-criminal, but it does sometimes overlap with criminal law. Certain acts could be both crimes and torts. So, tricky, I know. Usually, this wrongdoing can be followed up only through a single path, right? It can't be both, but there's some which could go either way. If the police mistreat a suspect, you could sue the police in tort, or you could, complain to another police force, and they might launch an investigation. The police can be prosecuted for a crime. Just because the police do something doesn't mean it's legal. Indeed, it could be a crime. Now, but a person who feels wronged by the police cannot use both avenues. It must be one or the other. So why would people go for the tortious route rather than the criminal route? Because, if the tortious route, nobody's going to prison for that, even if it is found that the police did do wrong. Because torts in area of civil law, therefore the burden of proof is much lower. It has to be the balance of probabilities. What's more likely, that the police did this bad thing or not? If it's a greater than 50% chance, in the estimation of the court, then the person who's moving the action against the police, then you win. However, if it was a criminal case, it has to be beyond all reasonable doubt, as in there could only be a scintilla of doubt. Now, I'll come on to criminal law in a different video, but criminal law, we don't express it as a percentage. But if I had to, I'd say, is it 95%? Is it 99%? Something like that. It has to be very, very close to certain. So it's much easier to prove things in tort than it is in criminal law. Right. So, tort is about wrongdoing against other people. Ryland and Fletcher is a leading case in tort. And the principle that arises from this is that if you have a thing out of control, then you are liable for any harm that it does. This applies to animals as well. De feri nature, like of a wild nature, which are presumed to require greater restraint. So this goes for, I don't know if you had a lion or something. So this goes for animals which are not usually domesticated in the British Islands. There's a fascinating way the statute said the British Islands, not the British Isles. But it obviously goes back to the era when the Republic of Ireland didn't exist, when we were part of the United Kingdom. Now, usually domesticated, this is where it's very tricky in law. So, dogs are usually domesticated. What about a particular breed of dog? Is that usually domesticated or not? You see, it's arguable. If it's a dog like from China or something, well, you could say, oh, come on, a dog is still a dog. How about chimpanzees? Are they usually domesticated? Well, there are not many chimpanzees in the United Kingdom. They're occasionally pets, more often in zoos. Is that domesticated or not? Again, it's arguable. Tame animals do not need such care, and we don't assume that they require such close supervision and great restraint, like a cat or something. So a thing out of control. This principle was established by Ryland and Fletcher. When it was laid down, it was then extrapolated onto other things. Could be a car. Okay, so it applies to driving. And so whoever commits a tort is a tortfeasor. All right, so tort is not an area of law I like a great deal. My favourite area, though, is defamation. What is it to defame somebody? Well, if I say something bad about you that gives you a bad name, then I am defaming you. We got fame, that's good, being known for a good reason. We've got infamy, being known for a bad reason. And to defame you is, I suppose, to make you infamous, to make people know about you for a bad reason. But what I'm saying is not true, or at least I can't prove that it's true. So I have defamed you. That's defamation. Right, so we'll go deeper into it. People are entitled to express their views and to report the news. And when I say people, I just don't mean individuals. I mean newspapers, television stations, radio stations, websites, and so forth. However, people also have the right not to have their reputations besmirched. And if somebody's blackening your name, that's obviously bad for you. So plainly, these two rights occasionally collide. And when they do crash into each other, which one should prevail? Well, that's for the courts to decide when they take precedence. So if someone says something false about you, which lowers you in the esteem of right-thinking people, which would cause you to be shunned or avoided, which would make people believe that you're incompetent in your job, which is saying that you committed an imprisonable offence, even if you've not been caught for it yet, or that you have a communicable disease. Any of these things is defamation, all right? Lower you in the esteem of right-thinking men. Say, well, she is dishonest, or she is filthy and unhygienic. That would lower you in their esteem, cause you to be shunned or avoided, or like, well, I'm just trying to think of a good example which would cause you to be shunned or avoided. Well, saying she is disgusting, that's kind of an expression of opinion which would be permissible, or saying she is a groupie of gangsters and she always hangs out with criminals, something like that, might cause you to be shunned or avoided. Saying you're incompetent in your job, all right. Saying that dentist, she really damaged my teeth, she caused me absolute agony, she's the worst dentist I ever met. That would be saying that someone is incompetent in her profession. Saying that you've committed an imprisonable offence, okay, even if you've not been caught for it. Saying he kidnapped somebody and he's a burglar, right? That would be defamation. If these things are false, by the way. Or saying you have a communicable disease. Saying this person has leprosy or is HIV positive. Doesn't make you a bad person to have these things, but if I'm falsely saying that somebody has this disease, that would damage their reputation. Now, people deserve sympathy if they have these illnesses, but nevertheless, to spread a false rumour that someone has such an illness would damage the person's reputation. So, defamation can be committed against a person. Defamation, when spoken, is slander. Clearly, accusing someone of those foregoing things would give them a bad name. However, it's entirely permissible to say any of these things about people if you can prove that the allegation is true. Note, the burden is on the person who made the statement to prove that it is true, right? That is crucial. Now, the person who claims I've been defamed, he doesn't have to prove that it's false, right? So there are two possibilities: prove that it's true, prove that it's false, and in between, not sure. If it's the prove that it's false, well, that's defamation. If it's not sure, that's still defamation. The onus is on the person who made the statement to prove that it is true. So, as is often said, what matters in the law is not what's true, not what happened, but what you can prove. All right? There's another area of defamation which applies only to women, and that is accusing a woman of unchastity. That's defamation, unless, of course, you can prove that it's true. It might seem a little bit out of date. Accusing a man of unchastity is entirely acceptable, as in fornication, adultery, things of that nature. Even as a bogus accusation, saying that a man committed adultery or had sex before marriage, either of these things, that's not defamation. Anyway, remember, spoken statements are usually slander, not libel. We'll come on to libel later, that's when it's published. Albert says Bilal is a useless accountant, and Albert says that to Charlie. However, Albert cannot prove what he said about Bilal is true. Then he's defamed Bilal. So Bilal could sue him yeah, and win damages and apology, he'd have to pay money to Bilal to make up for the harm he's done to his reputation. But if Albert could show some audits that Bilal had messed up, then Albert could successfully defend himself in the defamation case. So if Bilal launched a case, Bilal would lose, and Bilal will have to pay the legal costs of Albert. Right, leave it there for the moment.